Hello YouTube, HB Zeta here today, and you can probably see we've got something a little new right here, and it finally came. This is the microphone boom setup that I ordered with the money I got from AdSense. It wasn't much money, it was just a little bit, but it was enough to get a microphone boom, a pop filter, and a new heat-sinking fan for the computer to make sure it doesn't overheat anymore. All good things. And you'll notice that my voice should sound a little bit better right now, and the reason for that is the microphone is nice and close, and I can then go and turn the volume down of the microphone just enough so that it still peaks. It's still the same dB, but it shouldn't pick up as much environment noise. At the moment I'm still running my fan. It is hotter than hot at the moment in KZN. It's expected to be 35 degrees. What I thought I would do is really stress test this microphone by coming in a little bit closer and cuddling up, and we're going to have a discussion. We're going to talk about something, and I'll see if I can edit in some things while I'm busy with this. You've probably noticed by the title, this is going to be my first series review. I've done one or two little movie opinions before. Normally it's during a live stream or something like this. But I really want to test something that I'm going to be stressing my voice out to see how things sound. And to see if this pop filter actually works. And it should do. I did test it a little bit and I don't get my ticks and pops as much as I used to. Sounds a little bit better. So we're going to be talking today about Captain Picard, or just Card, the series. I'm a huge Trekkie. I've been watching Trek all of my life, and I think it started off with The Next Generation back when I was like 5 or 4. It was even before I went to school. It used to be on SABC. Well, no, it was TV2 first and then SABC afterwards. And I really had this deep love for Star Trek. It was this bright and vibrant series that no matter how bad things got in Trek, things generally worked out for the better. It had an extremely bright on-look to the future, and that's what separated it from everything else. We used to have a lot of science fiction, and most of the other science fiction that I watched always had like warnings or apocalypses or generally a bad outlook for the future. Good example of this is stuff like Outer Limits, Sliders, that sort of stuff. It really focused on the drama. Star Trek also had a lot of drama and it focused on a lot of plots, and it was like a sort of internalized look at society, what will happen if we really get on the verge of creating a utopia, if food isn't a problem anymore, if money isn't a problem anymore. Everyone has opportunities to do what they want. And that's what I absolutely loved about the series. It went on to Voyager. I love Janeway. Voyager, I grew up a little bit by the time Voyager aired, so I was at the age where I could understand things a little bit more. And I know that a lot of you didn't like Voyager, and you're going to tell me it was one of the weaker series, but for me, it's the one I grew up with. It's the one I remember the most. We had DS9 airing at about the same time. What they used to do here in South Africa, I don't know if this was true overseas or not, but they used to air like one season of Voyager, one season of DS9. In America, I know it was simulcast. And DS9 I didn't quite enjoy as much. Still watched it, still loved it, but I always waited for my Voyager. But nonetheless, I was extremely excited when Discovery was announced, and I watched the first few episodes, and I didn't like it. It turned into just another apocalyptic sci-fi show. Bleak outlook, dark sets, paper-thin characters. It wasn't a good show. I didn't like it at all, and I'll be honest, and I'll be vocal about it, and say that for me that was the worst Star Trek I've ever experienced. And then I got super excited about Picard. And before we get into the review, I'm just going to set up how I review first episodes of shows. Because Generally what you'll find is they get a very good director and a very good writer to set up a show. So they'll get the best they can possibly get to do the first episode and the last episode of a season. And this is for all sci-fi series that I've noticed so far. They did it for Lost, they did it for 4400, they did it for so many series at that sort of principle. Because let's face it, it's expensive. You can't keep on paying those sort of writers to do the entire series. So that's normally what happens. And because of this, we are not going to look at story and plot for the first 2 episodes of Star Trek Picard. We will touch on it, because a good first season needs to have a hook so that you can keep on watching. We are going to focus on the directing, set design, the acting, a little bit of the plot, and the actual initial setup of the plot. And that's going to be our focus. The second episode, of course, will also be included on this, and that is going to be the steering, the direction that they take the show in. Because you can have a fantastic opening episode and then the rest of the show just falls to pieces. And we're just going to look at a lot of nitpicking, because unfortunately when you look at things like directing, you look at things like set design and all of that, there's going to be nitpicking. And I know that a lot of you are going to comment on this video and you're going to tell me that I'm just being nitpicky and I'm not giving it any attention, anything like that. Sorry guys, that is the way it is. It's the first 2 episodes. I'm going to, if this is a success, do a full review of the season, which won't be nitpicking, which will actually look at the whole thing. And I recommend you subscribe or stay and wait for that, if that's your thing, of course. So coming into Picard, there was this huge amount of build-up. You had Picard, Jean-Luc, on the, he's not in character, of course, and he said you can expect a different Picard. You can expect a different person acting it. It's not going to be the same Picard you knew from the Next Generation, which to me that's perfect. That's fine. It's to be expected. A lot has happened, and I would like to see a different side to him. So you had that. Then you had the actual announcements of who's directing it, and it's the same Discovery team. So my heart immediately sank to the floor when I heard that, because Discovery was, in my opinion, terrible. That all of those things I mentioned earlier that we're going to look at, they did bad in all of them, not just some of them. But I digress, and I'm still getting used to this microphone. So let's look at Picard. And the first thing I want to do is, because this is a Picard review and we are going to talk about the camera work, is I'm going to go here to my white balance and I'm going to make everything extremely yellow. Like, this is my white balance to max. Ideally I would have 2 lights in back there just to like have this bloom, this constant bloom. And that's where my first sort of critique for this comes into place. The whole first episode is shot in this color, shot in this extremely amber color, which I presume they want to represent. It's the golden years, Picard has retired. It's fine, but then in his memories is sitting in on the actual deck. He's sitting in what I presume is his office on the Starship Enterprise. And it's dark, extremely dark. It's the same dark sort of levels that we got in Discovery. For some reason, they went onto like the actual the ship and decided we're going to start removing the LED lights. We don't need LED lights. We're going to start taking those out and turn it into a non-workable environment, because, you know, it's good on film. It looks great, and it's going to be this darkness to show you that it's not the same thing you grew up with. And that's my first gripe with this, that if Star Trek had this fantastic set design, they used color and light amazingly in all of the other seasons. A good example for this is if you go to like any Enterprise class ship, it's bright, it's light. It means that these are the good guys. These are the guys that's righteous. These are the people that you should be rooting for, that's in the light, and they're the good guys. And you go and you look at a Klingon ship. A Klingon ship would be extremely dark. and it would be red. It'll have this menacing red glow in certain areas of the ship, and that would symbolize their aggressive, menacing sort of attitude that you got with them. Like, don't really mess with them. These guys aren't going to take it from you. So set design is first and foremost, and if you're rebooting a series, you need to pay tribute to that. So you use the same color palette of the previous series, the same sort of designs. You make sure things look more or less the same. They decided not to do this. They decided to go the route of, we need to design something that looks good on film. So everything was dark, and I can actually probably go here and take my exposure down one. There we go. It's about, there we go. There, now we've got the right ambience of what that ship looked like. And they're like playing the board game in there. Sorry, I'm doing this on a whim, so I can't remember all the names and the technicals, so they're playing that. So you had Captain Picard there and Data sitting down and playing like the equivalent of chess. And it's a bit weird, the relationship between Captain Picard and Data, and we'll get to that a bit later. We're still talking about camera work and directing. And suddenly Mars explodes behind them, and Captain Picard wakes up in the sweat. And all of this so far, in terms of set design, you can't see the set, you can't see what they invested in there. In terms of camera work, it's poor. It's this yellowy orange, really dark. It's not taking inspiration from the original series. It's doing what you'll expect a film student to do to make things look good for television. So nonetheless, it ends there, he wakes up, and the yellowness is still there. There's still a yellow filter, yellow-orange, or gold filter on absolutely everything. There's lights everywhere in the wrong place. And he then sits and he talks to these two Romulan people that's I presume they're staying with him. They're like the equivalent of refugees. And then you start to actually notice that the camera work is the exact same bad camera work that we had before in Discovery, where there's like 11 different angles and they're constantly cutting in between them, like they don't know exactly what they want to do. They want to represent the scene as being like a tension-like scene, so it's quick cuts in succession, because that's what they teach you in film school to do, and that they do that. Once again, they don't harken back to the original, which was a few cameras was used. And yes, that this was due to budget restraints, and they were filming on film back then, so it was expensive. You can't have a lot of cameras. But once again, in atmosphere and the original, doing lesser cuts gives you this calm atmosphere, this everything is under control atmosphere with filming. So the filming and directing and the editing for me on the series is absolutely terrible, and I'm only going to describe like the first sort of scene there because I don't want to give anyone spoilers too much. We then go on, and then there's this television interview with Picard. And Picard is sitting there, and it's something mundane, like some sort of anniversary for a star or whatever. And the interviewer really goes like full ball into them about what happened to the Romulans and the refugees and the explosion on Mars. And she's really eating into him. And I have to say, Patrick Stewart's acting is absolutely on point. You see Patrick Stewart going up on his chair, getting defensive. He's stern. He's taking his mark, and he's going, "You are wrong." And the actual Starfleet has changed, and they made a poor decision. And he goes into it, and he really lays into her, and just harkens back to the absolutely stunning performance of Patrick Stewart. Acting for him is unparalleled in it. He's fantastic. He's a great actor. The problem that this presents is everyone else around him needs to act the same. So they did introduce another character earlier in it, which had like a sort of action scene. She was being assassinated. Same sort of thing happened in there, except this was a blue filter, which I presume they want to do that as representing life and whatever. But she had a blue filter, not an orange filter. Really quick cutting made the action very difficult to watch, and she starts acting, and acting is not as good as Picard's. But then again, she's much younger, whatever, you can forgive her for this. We fast forward a bit, there's some action scenes, there's everything else, and the actual episode then ends off with them doing the most blatant fan service I've ever seen, which is we're going to show you 2 seconds of a ball cue for no reason, no context whatsoever. We're just going to show this to you and then zoom out. So that was the most notable fan service, and I'll go into the second most notable fan service in there, and stuff like that just hits me in the face, and it's sad. You don't have to do that. You can keep that for the following episode, where the plot gets introduced. When that gets introduced, so that happens the next episode. Just keep that off screen and do that the next episode. Don't like remind fans. Please watch episode 2 because we are pandering to you. You know. So the other thing of fan service is Picard sort of goes into this sort of museum, and he walks down, and inside the museum, it's all of the things he had on the Enterprise. I don't know how they rescued it. I mean, the Enterprise sort of crashed and burned in Nemesis. That was destroyed. Yet there's things in there that don't make sense. Like, for instance, there's this big happy birthday, or it's the something other Captain's Day celebration banner hanging there and stuff. And this is the second pandering to fan things, because if they just watched the episode that was about, God didn't like the kids. He didn't like the fact that there was this day to celebrate captains and all that. It didn't suit his character. So why is this there? Other than just to, you know what, the Star Trek fans, they're going to remember this episode that this was done XYZ. We'll just stick that into the museum. And it harkens a question, the Enterprise is burning. How did I go and fetch that banner? And did Diana just like save the banner for some random reason after Captain's Day that the kids made? I don't get it. So that pretty much describes the directing, the plots. Well, I'll get to the plot. The plot will be more episode 2, but the directing that I had an issue with, the camera work I had an issue with, and then sort of the direction that they wanted to take for it, and how they're trying to harken back to the old thing, but they're not paying it respect. They're just inserting things for fan service. It then goes on to episode 2, which we can finally now go and talk a little bit about the plot. The plot for me is interesting enough that I'm going to keep watching. It's basically that Data had 2 children. So either he built them or he designed them or something of the sort. We don't know yet. We know that they're synthetic. We know that somehow they're connected into like a data matrix or something, because they're getting fed information the whole time, like Captain Picard's location at all times, that sort of stuff, which is nice and it makes sense in the universe. And with Data, I can see that sort of happening, especially on Earth where there's communications constantly. I sort of see that as being a thing. So the plot is good enough to keep on watching, but it doesn't harken back enough to the old plots, and it doesn't pay respect on old plots. So I'm watching this on the premise of we're going to experience something new. And what I'd love to report is that in the second episode, they kind of did this. They kind of pushed up the actual brightness, and suddenly the golden years has disappeared. It's toned down, and it's back to about normal level, which is about there. A little bit more, out there. There we go. So they sort of started toning this down, and they introduced the Borg ship, and I must admit they paid respect to what the Borg ship looked like. It looked like a Borg ship. Blue and green color schemes. They added like archway lights, and it's sort of a theme that they sort of enjoy is backlighting, like having big lights behind characters when filming. And with the yellow filter, it sort of looks like cheap tungsten lights, like old 80s tungsten lights, which, okay, that's the look they wanted. And I'm perfectly okay with that. And they sort of go back to the Borg cube. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone. They describe what's going on there, and the plot progresses. The actual editing gets a lot better. There's no more quick succession cuts. So I presume whoever they got on board for like the pilot episode, they're not going to be involved anymore. So you're not going to get these overly edited scenes and stuff anymore, which is good. The one pick that I do want to just point out in this episode is some replicators sitting there. And it's literally just, they took a 3D printer and plonked it down and put like a metal canteen tray in there to like edit in the food. And I don't mind. Props are expensive. But you look at the rest of it and you look at how much I invested on the set design. And you go, but why is the replicators 2 3D printers? And they didn't remove the nozzles or anything. So anyone, the people that's watching the series that were tech enthusiasts, we're going to go, why did you use 3D printers? It's sort of like someone described to them what replicating is, and it's almost like 3D printing, but you print food and we've got 3D printers, we'll use that. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the series, and I jumped around a lot because, like I explained before, we're not going to cover plot and everything else because it's spoiler free. I want to just cover the things that I've noticed in the series, my current thoughts on it, and whatnot. There's a lot of hate towards Picard at the moment, and there seems to be two camps once again. There's always two camps for Star Trek, and there's this group that's constantly hammering on it, really nitpicking way more than I did. I can only nitpick the director work and everything else that they're doing on there. And I don't think it's fair. The show hasn't progressed to a point yet where you can properly review it. You can review it about halfway through, which I plan to do a little update, and then a full review at the end of it. Until then, let's wait and see how this develops. Some things have improved in episode 2. I hope those improvements stick and they carry over. And at very least, you get to see more of Picard and Patrick Stewart's acting. I mean, it's really good. It fits the universe well, and I really wish this is a success. And I want to remind everyone, I spoke a bit about DS9 earlier. DS9, do yourself a favor, use Wayback Machine, go back to when it came out and read some of the reviews. People were up in arms about the religious context. They were up in arms about it being too dark. And it was the same thing, and I think we just give this time. People are going to be upset about the series. It's not what we expected. It's not what we were sold. We were sold that they were going to deeply respect the series, they were going to carry it over, everything else, and we know by now it's not due to the lawsuit that they're not respecting it. The lawsuit said that they needed to change 50% of the design of Star Trek to make it unique enough from the movies so it can be its own thing so they can keep the license. And they've changed way more than 50% in areas, things like the directing and the lighting and that sort of stuff. Shouldn't have been changed, but it was. So this is more going to be we have to keep the fans sort of happy, so let's throw in a few references and stuff and just make a good show. And I'm hoping this is what it's going to be, a good show. So that's my review of it. A good 15 minutes, a bit longer, 20-minute review of it. It's a bit rambly, and I'm hoping to skip spoilers and that sort of stuff. So I'm hoping that everyone can watch this. And it's mainly just to test this microphone. I'm still getting used to this because it varies a lot in volume from talking here to talking here. So I need to find the right tune for my voice and everything else and see how it goes. See how this goes. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoy that. That's me, HP Zeta. If you like this video, please let me know. I'll do more of them. I'll talk about other things. I'd love to talk about Doctor Who, the latest season of Doctor Who. Please let me talk about that. That's gonna be epic. So anyway, guys, cheers. Bye.